So, feel like most Red Wings fans were hoping for a better outcome after tonight's game, especially with how the trade deadline went. If they lost the game, it would have been fine. But if they lost their captain, not good, Devin. Not good.
Yeah, I'm looking over here at my calendar right now, and yep, can confirm we are in the month of March. Hell has broken loose.
I think that's a good intro.
Welcome to the Flying Octopus Podcast, offering a new perspective on Red Wings hockey, as well as all the important news from around the NHL. And now, here are your hosts, Tony Wolak, Devin Little, and Evan Sabrin.
Hey, it's Carter Bear, and you're listening to the Flying Octopus Podcast.
Welcome to episode 73 of the Flying Octopus Podcast. I'm your host, Tony Wolak. And here is my co-host, Devin Little. Evan Sabrin is at a work party right now, so we're going to let him enjoy himself for a little bit, and he'll be back with us next week. So go figure, the Adam Ernie episode is the one where Dylan Larkin potentially blew out his knee. We'll see what the prognosis is. Todd McClellan did follow up after the game and said he didn't think it was serious, but there's still tests that need to be done to confirm. Hopefully, this is not a serious injury for Larkin. It looked pretty bad on the replay, but by the time this recording comes out Saturday morning, who knows? Maybe we'll have more info by then. Devin, how are you feeling after today? It's been a roller coaster, huh?
I'm getting tired of riding roller coasters, man. It's so funny because I was telling a friend at work actually that today kind of felt like I don't know. I felt like I was in my mid-teens again. It's been a long time since the Red Wings were like going into a trade deadline as definite buyers, and sure enough, obviously they did bring a couple guys in, and it's just kind of be in that mindset again of all right, Detroit's going to bring people in, not send people out, and then the game they play their game against the Panthers and obviously wasn't the best game of the season, and then it's like we said in the cold open, it's March, and as much as it's exciting to know that there's reinforcements on the way. Man, was today a really a sobering reminder that there's still a lot of hockey to be played and a lot can go wrong in a month's time.
It really was a roller coaster today. It went from the Red Wings possibly not doing anything at the trade deadline because nothing was coming through. Last minute, it comes out that they acquired Justin Faulk. So everyone's like, oh, great. And then the 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 return comes out and it's a first and a third. That's the first thing that's reported. And I don't know about that. But whatever. It's just good cost of business.
It's to doing business.
And then we find out that Dmitry Pachelnikov is also included in the package, and I'm like, oh no. Uh-oh. Eventually, I got comfortable with it, but not ideal. We'll get to that a little bit more in a bit here, but Red Wings start the game. You're like, you know what? They're going to be playing with a lot of emotion. They're going to be ready to go. Yzerman brought in reinforcements as he said he would. They earned it. They got goalied, it is what it is. If the Red Wings just lost the game because of Sergei Bobrovsky, it happens. But then, obviously in the third period, Dylan Larkin injures his knee, and it's like, oh no, we've sunk to a new low here. This is not good. This is not how I wanted this day to turn out. But here we are at 10:15 on Friday night recording. And I don't know, Devin, I'm exhausted. I am.
Yeah, I don't blame you. It's I, yeah. No other way to describe it than a roller coaster, and I think that um, it's like I said, we're in for a very interesting month. We're gonna just kind of go off of what has been said recently in terms of Larkin's health. Doesn't seem like it'll be long term. I'm not going to write off the possibility that he does miss some time. Obviously, a substantial blow to the team, even if it's a couple games. Yeah, we've seen it plenty of times in the past how the team just does not look the same without Dylan Larkin in the lineup. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see or just to hear what the official status of Larkin is, and then just how the team responds to it. There's, kind of, going back to last year when Larkin kind of called out Yzerman for not doing anything at the trade deadline, really. That was kind of then put back into focus this year or today with the deadline and Yzerman going out and getting David Perron and Justin Faulk. And then I think before the game, Larkin mentioned that, it's good to see them, it's good to see management come in and go out and get and bring in some quality players and help kind of boost the team's chances. And now the ball is in the players' court. They got to make good on that promise, and it's going to be a lot easier for them to make good on that promise if Larkin's in the lineup. So it's kind of weird where, as this episode's getting listened to and published and listened to, this might be a non-issue, but also it might be a big issue. So it very quickly has become probably the biggest topic is what is Dylan Larkin's status. Now the trades that the Red Wings made, I obviously the biggest one is the Justin Faulk one, and I think that we can dedicate some good time to that. But I want to talk about David Perron real quickly. Very small trade for me, unexpected. It was kind of like oh shoot, okay, David Perron's back, cool. And ultimately, it's a trade that ultimately might amount to nothing. The condition on the draft pick traded is whether or not he plays a game with the Red Wings, basically. So if for whatever reason Perron's not able to enter the lineup this season, then the Red Wings traded nothing and got to have a feel-good moment for a second, I guess. But it seems like he will play. I think he's a couple weeks out, so he'll be kind of a late addition to the lineup. But I do think that was a solid addition, obviously with some familiarity with some of his new teammates. Familiar with the Detroit area, was part of that team that just missed a couple seasons ago. Not necessarily somebody who was on my radar, but once the trade came through, it made all the sense in the world to me. Real quick, what's your read on the David Perron trade, Tony?
Yeah, I had the same reaction as you. I got the notification that the Red Wings acquired David Perron, and I was like, huh, how about that? All right. No, but it was an interesting move, and they had been looking for someone who plays with an edge, so it makes sense. You spoke about the conditions a second ago, so just want to lay that out for everyone listening if you haven't seen. But if David Perron plays a single game for the Red Wings in the regular season or playoffs, Detroit transfers their 4th round pick to the Senators. If he does not, and we say this because he had hernia surgery in January, he's expected back within the next 2 weeks, but still, there could be setbacks. But if he does not, the Red Wings do not pay the Senators anything. Now, if the Red Wings make the playoffs and they win the first round and Perron plays in 50% or more of Detroit's games, then that 4th round pick becomes a 3rd round pick. So that is the deal for David Perron. It's a good move for the Red Wings in the sense of they get a guy who is a culture ad. And this is like, I know when it comes to things that are like that you can't exactly quantify, or you talk about a locker room guy that sort of gets, sometimes that can be shorthand for like, he's not that good. But I mean, if we're being honest, that's been the case before. But Perron clearly had a positive impact on the Red Wings locker room. He was missed last year, and he's coming in at the right time when this team is pushing for the playoffs. And they're going to need an emotional leader, especially if Larkin misses any time. Even if he's not playing, just having him around will be good. Like Moritz Seider was speaking to reporters earlier Friday and had this to say about David Perron. His care level is just really high. He always thinks about the guy next to him and never puts himself on the first position. That's something we really admire and appreciate. Now, again, David Perron wore an A in Detroit for the 2 years he was there. Clearly, this organization, the team value him. Now, bringing him back, I'm not expecting a ton offensively, if I'm being honest. He'll play in the bottom six most likely, and there'll be some scoring here and there. Probably won't impact 5-on-5 scoring too much, but still, there's value. There's value for culture. There's value for just having that leader around. There's that person who's been in the playoff chase his whole life in the NHL. He is someone who is a net positive for the Red Wings, and certainly worth a 4th round pick if that's what it amounts to. But yeah, Devin, I was a fan of this like when it became a thing. I know the Red Wings pursued Michael Bunting before they pivoted to David Perron. They made Dallas. They made Nashville an offer for Michael Bunting, but Dallas swooped in and offered something that the Red Wings weren't willing to try to match. Now, again, not a top 6 scorer that they probably needed most out of anything, but something at the very least.
And I think that that something is it's they couldn't get away. I feel like they couldn't get away with doing nothing up front. They needed to get a forward. They needed to get a defenseman. Obviously, like you said, you ideally would have gotten a top 6 forward and a really a big impact forward. Perron's not quite that, but I do think for all the reasons you mentioned there, he is a net positive here, especially at that acquisition cost. I don't think he'd be too upset, even if it ends up being a third round pick. That means the Red Wings are in the 2nd round of the playoffs, and I think that you would trade a 3rd round pick for that. Speaking of 3rd round picks, though, the Red Wings acquired one in a trade with the Pittsburgh Penguins during the ahead of the trade deadline as well. This one, the Perron one came out of nowhere. This one came out of nowhere too, but for like a different reason as well. The Red Wings acquired a 3rd round pick, San Jose's 3rd round pick from the Pittsburgh Penguins in exchange for winger Elmer Soderblom. Elmer Soderblom had been in and out of the lineup, if we're being honest, pretty much since making his debut with the Red Wings a few seasons back. Obviously went back down to Grand Rapids, spent some time there again to refine his game, came back up, had stretches where he looked really good, obviously has that size that we know him for, but then also had plenty of times where he kind of was, to use a phrase of Coach Tom McClellan's here, he was just a jersey. He just kind of a big dude skating around, and you couldn't miss him doing nothing because he's a big dude. So maybe kind of out of nowhere, because you're expecting the Red Wings to add, and so you see this move where they send somebody out. It's like, whoa, what's going on here? Now, what they ended up doing with that 3rd round pick, I mean, we're going to get there, and I think it's a little bit of savvy GMing by Steve Yzerman. But first things first, what do you think, Tony, of Elmer Soderblom now being a Pittsburgh Penguin?
So I know they were actually trying to move him for a bit of time now. Wasn't in the sense of like they didn't want him. It was like it was clear that it wasn't a fit. And I mean, you said it. He was in and out of the lineup, and then just wasn't producing a whole lot. And as we've seen in the past, like if there's a player who needs a fresh start, Steve Yzerman will do whatever it takes to get that for them. That happened with Jonathan Berggren, happened with Philip Zadina. Like if a player's not going to be like a key cog in his team, he'll do them a favor and get them to a better place. And he did that for Soderblom. As a quick tangent, the Red Wings actually offered him to Vancouver for Tyler Myers, and that's where that whole situation started. Ultimately, Tyler Myers, he declined to waive his no trade clause and stayed in Vancouver. Ultimately went to Dallas. Dallas took two players that the Red Wings wanted, both Myers and Bunting. So, all right, well, this is why Jim Nill's the GM of the year, right? No, but with Soderblom, it's like, yeah, he was obviously a draft pick during the rebuilding period. It would have been great to see him pan out, like even for a late round pick as he was, getting NHL time. That's more than you expect for that type of player. But just the highlights that you got from him, just those spurts here and there of quality hockey, it made you think that something was there. But ultimately, it wasn't meant to be. And so the Red Wings got a 3rd round pick, which is fine, because if they were trying to move him anyway, you can get a 3rd that you can then turn around and send to St. Louis as part of the Justin Faulk trade. Sure, why not? Like, it was a good move by Yzerman to do something with that and not just give him away for like future considerations. So, Devin, I know you've obviously been tracking Soderblom since he was drafted and has gone through the system. Like, how are you feeling about this?
He was a prospect. He was a player that, I think at one point in time he had like a big time drop in my top 25 ranking, and then he had a big time. He was kind of all over the place. He's somebody that consistency was such a big thing for him and for me. And we saw that plenty during his time as a Red Wing. He had those stretches where when he puts it all together and he is playing at full throttle and he is using his size, and he's in deep, he's forward checking, he's a whole other animal. There's really no other player in the league like Elmer Soderblom. However, that version of him only comes around for little bits, for little spurts, and then he goes away, and then you're left with whatever's left, and you're kind of just waiting for the other guy to come back. And that's kind of who he's been for, at least 3-4 years. And don't get me wrong, he is a really good player. When he played over in Sweden, he was a very good player over there, and was a very good player in the AHL with the Griffins too. But if you're gonna have a consistent role in an NHL lineup, you got to bring it every single day. You got to bring your A game. You got to do what you do best, as if not every single day, way more often than not. And I think that in Soderblom's case, he just couldn't figure it out. Now, I do wish him well in Pittsburgh, and I honestly hope he flourishes, because he could be a very, very fun, like I said, very unique player. He's just got to find it within himself to be that guy more often than not.
So that brings us to the headliner, Justin Faulk. Red Wings acquired him only a few minutes before the 3 p.m. deadline from the St. Louis Blues for a 1st round pick, a 3rd round pick, the one that the Red Wings acquired for Soderblom, Justin Hall, and Dmitry Bichelnikov. Now, yeah, I know we've talked about this. We talked about this last episode. I've written about this a couple times. I had concerns about the Red Wings pursuing Justin Faulk for just the high acquisition costs that would come with them. I would rather they spend those assets on a forward, which I think was a greater need than defensive depth, and then pursue a depth defenseman. I've mentioned Nick Perbix a bunch of times. He ultimately didn't move from Nashville, but I think he would have definitely been cheaper than Justin Faulk. But here we are. Justin Faulk, he does fit. Like, cost aside, he fits. He is signed for this year and next year at $6.5 million. He turns 34 later this month. It's up there, but he's still performing at a high level. During his time with the Blues, he was, a top pairing defenseman, played 20 plus minutes a night, every night, willing shot blocker, strong defense at 5-on-5. The offensive side to his game used to be his calling card. It hasn't been there so much this year. I'm wondering though if that's more of a deployment thing than anything. So we'll see how he fits into the picture in Detroit. It's expected that he'll play on the second pair with Ben Sherratt, more of a sheltered role than what he experienced with the Blues, and hopefully with that he's able to bolster Detroit's offense a little bit from the blue line. But otherwise, yeah, he's signed through next season. He has the ability to play both sides. So it's possible that, at some point next season, we see Axel Sandin-Pellikka next to him and Faulk over on the left. Who knows? I mean, but he fits, and he is clearly Detroit's third best defenseman now. Detroit's blue line is better overall. If you take out Jacob Bernard-Docker and insert Justin Faulk, that is a huge improvement. No offense to Jacob Bernard-Docker. That's just Justin Faulk is just a quality defenseman. Now, Devin, I feel like you and I were on the same page here. The acquisition cost was pretty high. I mean, it was the going rate for a player of his caliber at this year's deadline. Tell me, do you have buyer's remorse already, or are you like, it is what it is, man?
Right now, I'm very much in it is what it is territory. Now, when we do our next recording in a week and we get a look at Justin Faulk, who knows? Maybe we go in either direction. Honestly, I feel like this acquisition, just in general, could go either way. I feel like we could end up really liking this deal, regardless of acquisition costs. And I do 100% agree. I think Faulk fits in this lineup, and I think that fit could be what leads us to be like, you know what, this was a good trade. Good job, Eisenman. Good job. But I also think that we could end up looking back on this and being like, Faulk is he's not he's 34 years old. He is what he is, right? He's not a young up or a mid-20s, entering his prime defenseman that you think could maybe even take another step forward. This is a player that, at least when you go off of like age curves, this is a regressing player. And I think that maybe that's another reason why I do actually kind of like the deal. And let me explain it. I think that the Red Wings needed to get a defenseman that sets a bar, but not an extremely high bar. Because I think that the goal here is for Sandin-Pellikka to overtake Faulk on the depth chart. And Faulk kind of sets the bar in that sense. You got to be better than this guy to be on that second pairing now. And I think that right now he's not, and that's fine. I think that's why you go out and get Faulk in the first place, is because you are acknowledging ASP's not quite there yet. I think we all kind of think he definitely is capable of getting there, but he's not there yet. And Faulk buys a year and a half, basically, for him to, if not get there, get close enough. And it's not somebody that blocks his way forward too, like it might have been if you got a younger defenseman who was going to want a bunch of term or something. Faulk, I also think if this acquisition works and the fit is really there, I could see him kind of being a right side Sherratt, in the sense of maybe he sticks around a little bit longer. I'm not saying another 3 years or anything, but maybe after next season he gets a 1-year extension because it just kind of works, and he's still being productive at that point. He's probably a third pairing defenseman, and you don't have a bunch of right-handed defensemen coming up in the system right now. You have one really, and it just kind of it stabilizes things, and you don't have to worry about it for one more year. I could see that happening. That only happens though if the fit is really good and the rest of the season goes well and next season goes well too. So I'm definitely getting ahead of myself, but yeah, just kind of felt like a first round pick it had to be included in any sort of deal the Red Wings were going to do to significantly improve their blue line. I know I had kind of made my peace with it going into the deadline. I imagine Tony, you had kind of made your peace with it. They're probably going to trade a significant asset, whether it's a first, a top tier prospect, maybe even multiple, right? It's a little bit of a bummer that like Justin Faulk is the guy that gets the first round pick out of Detroit, but ultimately I think if we're talking tonight about how the Red Wings brought in David Perron and nothing else, it's a much more empty feeling than talking about how they traded a first round pick for Justin Faulk. At least they did something, and at least it feels like it could work out in a way that makes the acquisition costs feel a little more worth it.
That's fair. It's fair. I don't love just the overall cost. If it was, I guess let me put it this way: if it was just a first, a third, and Justin Hall, I could live with that because you're essentially trading a first, Soderblom, and Hall for Justin Faulk. But no one reported this. It didn't leak until the Red Wings posted the trade that Dmitry Buchelnikov was part of the deal. Now, I feel like he's a polarizing player just because obviously he's been playing in the KHL for some time. Red Wings fans aren't as familiar with him as some of their other prospects. I feel pretty strongly that he's going to be a solid NHL player. Time will tell. His contract in the KHL expires this season, and he's expected to come over to North America thereafter. Possibly playing a playoff game for the Griffins or something, but who knows? Anyway, he is a Blue now. Devin, you cover prospects a little bit more in depth than I do. Yeah, how you feeling about this one?
Right. So to kind of piggyback off of what I was saying just a little bit ago, I had made my peace with giving up a first round pick, even for a player of Justin Faulk's caliber. You know, obviously more than you want to give up, but you got to give to get, especially in a seller's market. Now, I had definitely not made any peace or whatever however you want to phrase it, with them trading a prospect like Buchelnikov. And it's even more like when you kind of look at it just face value, you almost like like couldn't you like there I know there's more to it than just like, here, take Justin Faulk, because that getting rid of that contract is a boost for us. There's salary map, there's contract math there. There's literal like you can only have 50 contracts math that goes into play there. There's a lot more to it than that. But like one of my first thoughts was, would they be able to keep Buchelnikov if they didn't take Hall off of their hands? Like, could they have just done the picks? Like, Buchelnikov so the reason why he stands out or at least stood out in the Red Wings prospect pool is because I think he's a very unique prospect. We talk about the Red Wings type when it comes to prospects: the hardworking, nonstop motor, underrated skill, blah, 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 all those types of players. Well, that's not Buchelnikov. He doesn't have underrated skill. Skill is his game. That's what he's all about. He was arguably their most skilled forward prospect, and that's not an exaggeration. Arguably his biggest knocks against him are like is his compete level, which is like the strength of the Red Wings prospect pool, and then just kind of his slender build. You could see, bigger, tougher NHL defensemen really, roughing him up a bit, and then also just NHL timeline. You never really knew if he was going to come over or not, but those are the cons. When you look at the pros, he has the potential to be a truly dynamic winger. over the years have kind of settled into him being like a really good middle six winger that can really thrive on like a second line type of deal. And maybe there's even a higher, I mean, I think there is a higher ceiling than that, but you kind of go into expecting him to be this middle six guy. If that's what he is, I mean, the Blues, you throw in that first round pick, you get Bachelnikov. That alone is a really good deal. Shout out to Doug Armstrong over in St. Louis, their outgoing general manager, because that's a heck of a deal. Eh, I ultimately Bachelnikov, you can live with this with giving up Bachelnikov because of all the other forwards and all the other talent that is in the prospect pool. And at the end of the day, this is the type of trade that playoff teams have to make, or at least teams that aspire to be in the playoffs. But that doesn't soften the blow any less. They gave up two quality pieces in a first round pick and Dmitry Bachelnikov. And for a player that is good, to his credit, but is not a difference maker. And if you're giving up a prospect like Bachelnikov and a pick like their first, an unprotected first, mind you, in this draft, you probably wish for a little bit more return on investment. Ultimately, though, just to kind of say it again, you're either serious about making the playoffs or you're not. And this was the cost of doing business. I personally would have liked it if they would have taken the Connor Murphy deal that Edmonton got there. Second round pick in 2028, I'm pretty sure is all they paid for that. But they didn't. They got Justin Faulk instead. And for like we've already said, the fit's there. So now all you can do is just hope that this trade ages at least somewhat well.
Yep, it's a good perspective. Just some other news and notes we want to cover off before we close out today. So the Red Wings did discuss forwards with other teams. Nothing happened apart from David Perron, but they did talk to Vancouver about Elias Pettersson. Salary retention was a blocker there. That apparently was the case for any team discussing Pettersson with the Canucks. They are unwilling to retain any salary on his $11.6 million cap hit, which if you're going to trade away a player of his caliber, you have every right to, choose not to do that. But according to a source, the Red Wings and Canucks are not done talking. The Canucks want to revisit this conversation in the summer, so it's just far from dead. So we'll see what happens there. Detroit also touched base with St. Louis on Robert Thomas. They reached out to the Rangers about Vincent Trocheck. On defense, there was conversations with the Flyers about Rasmus Ristolainen and Toronto about Oliver Ekman-Larsson. None of these panned out, but it just goes to show that the Red Wings really left no stone unturned. From what I heard, their trade board was massive. They didn't have a preference for center or winger, and they valued forward and like scoring help and defensive help equally. Just this is what they were able to get done. Faulk and Perron, and that's really it. Otherwise, the asking prices were more than they were comfortable with. Elsewhere around the league, I guess focusing just on the Atlantic division for now, the Tampa Bay Lightning brought back Corey Perry. So that was a little surprise around lunchtime, especially with Perry expressing interest. They wanted to sign a contract extension with the LA Kings. Montreal did not do anything, if I recall correctly. Meanwhile, Buffalo brought in several depth players. They brought in Sam Carrick. They brought in Logan Stanley, Luke Shen, and Tanner Pearson. All these players would be bottom pair, bottom six players, but good, solid role players nonetheless. Do like how that impacts the overall skill of their team. Otherwise, yeah, Detroit, they certainly did what they could to improve their team. I know there's a lot of people out there who still love how Yzerman is handling general general manager responsibilities, but I don't blame him for trying. It's just, he's also not going to hurt the franchise by spending 4 first-round picks worth of talent on Robert Thomas, or at least now. Maybe in the offseason, maybe it's Thomas or Pedersen or someone else that he brings in to help out the forwards, but he has to also look out for the long-term interest of the organization, not just this year. Devin, what were some of the trades that you saw around the league that you liked? I think the one that stood out for me was like the Anaheim Ducks acquiring John Carlson from the Capitals. That one to me was like, it took the Ducks from, hey, look, they're probably going to make the playoffs. This should be fun, to, oh, they could actually do some damage in the playoffs, especially with how the Pacific Division is looking. That is going to be a fun one to watch. What'd you like?
You being over in the DC area too, I'm sure that trade sent shockwaves through your local neighborhoods as well. Excuse me. I think maybe this is just because we've been covering the Red Wings for so long that like I'm still kind of breaking out of the sellers mentality. But I just think in general, I think the St. Louis Blues had a really good day. We talked about how they made out in the Justin Faulk deal. Obviously, you can make the argument that they did extremely well in that deal alone. And then they also traded their captain, Braden Shen, to the New York Islanders in exchange for a first-round pick, a third-round pick, Jonathan Drouin, and goalie Marcus Giloff. The thing I like about that is now they have 3 first-round picks in this year's draft, as well as 3 third-round picks. They don't have a second-round pick, but I think having 3 picks in the first and third rounds compensates for, or makes up for that, I would say. And then they have Drouin, who is signed for next season, so they can they still have him to fill out their lineup. And then if they decide they still need to continue to sell, he's a player that they can look to sell in the future as well. So shout out to Doug Armstrong. I mentioned he's their outgoing general manager. They've already kind of set up where Alex Steen is taking over for him as a first-time general manager this summer. And to Armstrong's credit, he's leaving Steen with a stocked cupboard of picks for this year's draft. They got a lot of young talent that needs a little time to develop. They obviously brought in Bachelnikov as well. As far as a seller approaching the deadline is concerned, this is about as good as it gets. This is probably somewhat equivalent to a few years ago when the Red Wings got 2 first-round picks from trading Tyler Bertuzzi and Philip Hronek.
You're right. Doug Armstrong really did do a great job. He could have traded Robert Thomas. He probably could have traded Jordan Kyrou too, but he did not like what was being offered. And if he didn't have to trade him, why force it? And credit to him for not doing that. So with that, we've reached the end of the Adam Ernie episode. Red Wings play next Sunday in New Jersey against the Devils. Then Tuesday in Florida against the Panthers, and then Thursday against the Tampa Bay Lightning in Tampa Bay. So 4-game road trip with Dallas coming after that. It's time to put up or shut up. If Dylan Larkin's there, great. If not, then the team needs to figure it out because, Yzerman, gave them the tools they need to, push for the playoffs. And, now it's on them to finish it out. They've had a good season so far, and you got to roll with what happens. So with that, we'll leave you. Thanks for listening and watching, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Flying Octopus Podcast. Follow us on YouTube at the Flying Octopus channel and Twitter at Flying Octopod.